The most popular class, maximum damage in a single target per turn, ability to ignore charm and sanctuary, ranged combat potential. Yes, today I will explain in detail how to create the strongest paladin build in BG3, who can easily get you through the entire honor mode both solo and in a team. Specifically for this video, I completed the game twice, and what can I say, in addition to being extremely powerful, the build is also fun. Races. Here we have the most average pack of options for melee build. Wood Elf / Half Wood Elf, Halfling, Orc and Githyanki. The Wood Elf can simply run further than everyone else. Halfling, on the other hand, has very little movement points, but compensates for this by increased hit chance. And you will almost never encounter critical failures. Some people even downloaded a mode that tracks amount of 1s and 20s that you rolled through the game, and you can notice that Halflings, even at the end of the campaign, can have at most 3 critical failures. This makes this race somewhat unbalanced option that reduces randomness in this game, which is especially great for solo playthroughs. One downside, all male characters of this race are incredibly ugly. I think that's exactly how I will look like if go to the Netherlands with my 6'3" height. Orcs run an average of 9 meters and have a passive ability that increases critical damage a bit. Additionally, they have a pretty interesting resurrection passive that can be used to fully restore all actions. You just need one ally with your orc in the same turn. With that, if your orc dies at this turn, he resurrects with full amount of actions. Githyanki, specifically Laizal, is interesting option mainly because in the first 2 acts we will be using this butter knife. And if you're not playing as a Gith, after every long rest you'll have to transform into one, then either save and reload, or take off and put on the sword to get the psychic damage bonus. In the 3rd act, Githyanki have no real advantages, except for a moderately useful teleport, unlike Astarion, who only gets stronger by Act 3, however 1d10 necrotic damage is anyway worse than 1d8 physical damage on a critical hit from an orc, so you may keep Astarion for some ranged class. A unique option for a paladin is Gale. Unlike Astarion, who can be made a paladin even as a companion, Paladin Gale only works if you choose him as an origin character at the start of the game. In the 2nd act, Gale receives a permanent additional 3rd level spell slot, but that's where his advantages end. In my opinion, a halfling or orc would be stronger. If possible, I would recommend taking the Dark Urge background instead of Tov to get this clock. Also take a War Domain Cleric to get the common spell. At the Prologue, along with Shadowheart, this will give you 4 attempts to get the Fire Sword. If you're playing solo without Shadowheart, then 2 attempts. Everburn Blade is a great start for any melee build, only don't forget to prepare the spells.
Hey, you, finally awake.
Helmet of Speed, Spurred Band, cross the bridge, go down the river, Smuggler's Ring, key, enter the basement of the house, place items on 2 thrones, and as a reward we get Gloves of Heroism. The best gloves for a paladin in the 1st act. Also it wouldn't hurt to take 2 greatswords that are lying here. At the Goblin Camp we get access to Wither's services. We take a paladin, Oath of Vengeance. On a 1st level we get pretty useless damage buff, and on a 3rd, Vow of Enmity. Casting it on yourself gives you an advantage on each of your attacks, which is incredibly powerful, but this appears to be a bug. In theory, Vow should not be usable before battle, instead you should spend a charge on a specific enemy. If you use it like this, it's still very powerful, and I'll be using it this way during my playthrough. However, no one is stopping you from buffing yourself. As a feat we take Great Weapon Master, and on level 5, game grants us extra attack. At level 6, multiclass to a Bard, take Long Strider, other spells at your discretion, except that Disguise Self is extremely useful for transforming into Githyanki if you have some Gith equipment, and for some reason don't have Laizal in your party. Take Friendship Cantrip, and if you already had Cursed Lands, take Light Cantrip. If not, Minor Illusion will be better. At level 7 we get the 3rd Short Rest from the Bard, and I will explain the further levels when transitioning to Act 2. After each respec, as you may know, you can just steal money back from Withers. He's not aggressive. This way you can change the class of everyone in your party with just 100 gold. Also, don't forget to enable Divine Smites in the Reactions tab. You'll have to do it every time you get new level of spell circles.
End him or leave him. But don't you dare grovel to this slug.
Intimidate Crusher or provoke a fight, just don't kill him. Our goal is to shame him into leaving the stage. After that, kill him the most honorable paladin roleplay way, from behind while he's alone. So we're head to the Underdark. If you run out of gold or lockpicks later on, you can farm both by stealing them from Mole in Emerald Grove. Get the teleportation amulet to make it easier to close the distance in a fight. Get Falara Loof by simply hitting one of the characters next to the sword. Speed Boots from the Gnome Girl, buy Caustic Ring and Amelum's Amulet. If you complete his small quest involving visiting the local tower, he will start selling it. Using the amulet's ability, you can easily restore a spell slot for Divine Smite. Moreover, nothing prevents you from switching back to your old jewelry after using it. I'm not even talking that with this amulet you can restore slots without spending resources. Pearls and Restoration replenishes even from partial resting, just like the Illithid skills. And don't forget about Bow of Awareness, that grants us some initiative. You can also buy some giant elixirs from Ethel, but I don't like using consumables, so I only bought potions in the third act. In my humble opinion, the strongest party in the game up to level 5 looks like this. 2 paladins, one with the Everburn Blade, the other with Falara Loof, a sorcerer with Twin Spell and Hold Person ability, and a Divination Wizard with the Portent Die that make Paralyze's chance 100%. Hold Person is the best spell for a paladin. Divine Smite skill with the guaranteed crits that Paralyzes provides more than any other damage source. In the future, I might make a video about the ideal control mage, but for now I don't want to overload the guide with the leveling of an additional character, as well as talking about 2 tadpoles that you collect from the start of the game to get Luck of the Far Realms. I think everyone already knows their location. So, little build show off on random enemies. And even solo effectiveness is not so bad.
Thanks.
These nature golems are immune to Hold Person. However, at the same third level of my characters, they pose no threat, because besides the combination of Paralysis and Smite, we also have Falara Loof and Magic Missile, which, oddly enough, works in Honor mode. One of the last things that might interest us in first act is Kagha's Amulet, which is easiest to get by looting the latter in the swamp. After that you can confront Kagha,
What?
and with help of some other druids kill her. If you don't want to kill Kagha and her friends, you'll have to kill the Goblin Leaders, and Kagha will move to an isolated location. By the way, purely because of these gloves from Damon in the third act, I don't see any point in helping the goblins. 1 extra tadpole is don't worth it. Just before you go after the Goblin Leaders, make sure to convince Roland to stay in the grove. On a Paladin class, you don't even need to pass a check. On solo playthrough, I would recommend coming to the Goblin Leaders a bit later, maybe even after the 5th level. If you don't want to wait, they can anyway be defeated quite easily, without any risks. First, disarm them with a command, and then with our gear, escaping from the fight won't be a problem. And then returning to the non-aggressive mini-bosses after a long rest. Even at a 4th level character like me, you can easily handle them. You also can use the same method to take out all the small minions by killing 1 or 2 goblins and escaping before anyone can trigger the drums. Also, you can provoke Rexlin to make 3 throwing attacks. If you steal his spears instead of a boss fight, you'll be dealing with a pacifist who will run up and away from you while receiving opportunity attacks. For some reason, he refuses to use his fists, so he'll just stay and scream at you in most of his turns, even though he can fight if we provoke him by running away. Considering that with 1 successful critical hit, and a second guaranteed from the Illithid ability we can heal him in one turn. I have no idea why I'm explaining this strategies to you. Okay, I'm searching for tadpoles, getting XP and focus on reaching level 5 to get the best weapon for melee character for the first 2 acts. You can use various ways to get XP, like farming turrets in the Underdark, but I prefer boss fights, especially since they are incredibly trivial with my strategy.
This feels good.
Auntie Ethel's hair. I wouldn't recommend using it on Paladin. It's better to boost the dexterity of a character you plan to make an archer in the future. But if you're playing solo and have no other hero to spend it on, boost your dexterity. You can't raise charisma above 24 anyway. With dex, you'll at least get an additional initiative. Once you reach level 5, take a character from the camp and level him up as a Beastmaster Ranger. Now he can summon a bear, one whose skills is knocking the weapon out of enemies' hands. Use invisibility on the bear, either with a spell or by throwing a potion, and attack Ketheric was. By that bear's skill, the only chance of not knocking out the weapon is to miss the attack. However, if a fully rested divination wizard is standing next to the bear, the beast cannot miss. Only remember that the portent die of a divination wizard, like other reactions, doesn't work from invisibility. Same with divine smite. If you want to perform it from an invisible state, you need to do it through the icon in the lower interface. By the way, thanks for that sword strut to a toy house and his shorts. Now I use it in every melee class playthrough. So you can just pick up the dropped legendary sword from the floor while invisible, or in stealth, or by running, we have enough movement speed with our gear, or just by killing those Githyankies. With Paladins you can do this even at level 3. I even recorded a shorts video about this while testing the build. If you're playing solo and ready to take risks, or if you're ready to use the task manager for a reload, you can send the bear to disarm Ketheric at level 5, but for a guaranteed success, I would recommend leveling up to 7 to take 2 levels of Divination Wizard in addition to Ranger. Heavy Adamantine Armour. Before going after it, be sure to save Barcus route at the mill, and make sure to take a good long rest before sailing to Grimforge. If you for some reason decide to kill all Dwagas at the boat, return to the shore and do a long rest again, because once we enter that location, we will have restrictions on fast travel and long rests. If we do too much of it, Nere and the deep gnomes, including Barcus, will die, so we want to make it in time. Use strength elixir to jump skip a long path to Grimforge and loot mold for our future armor. Jump couple more times, ignoring the Shar servants, and take Mithril. Activate the Grim, teleport to the ledge, and either shoot him, or remember that our mages, and if you have 6th level a paladin too, have minor illusion, with which you can easily lure Grim under the hammer. Next, the Dwagas. Minor illusion will help us deal with them too. These guys, by the way, you don't even need to lure anywhere. If you're being rude enough to Elder Breathware, he will just attack you, and no one will back him up. I really recommend either defeating those Dwagas in one fight if you're playing in a party, or if you're solo, lure them as far away from the group as possible before attacking from stealth. This is because if you exit the fight or they lose track of you while you're invisible, your character will be given an unremovable criminal status. Due to this occurs a bug that prevents you from getting the extra tadpole from Nere. The only way to avoid this is to run out of the fight on the foot without using an interface or invisibility. Free Nere, convince him not to touch the slaves, pretend to be on his side to get the tadpole, and then kill him to get another worm.
Another parasite.
Take the second most important balding gnome on this planet to your camp. There might be a bug where the full dialogue with Barcus doesn't appear. If that happens, try talking to him with different characters. Towards the end of the act, you can start a romance with Astarion, it's always good for physical-based characters. Clear out the remaining enemies for the XP. We're moving on to the second act.
Uncertainty. In the better of you. Stay away from the
Githyanki Inquisitor's room. There lies a ring that deals psychic damage while you're concentrating. We can easily trigger concentration with an enchanted weapon or a friendship if you don't want to spend spell slots. As you understand, if you're playing solo, you have no choice but to bring along free summons like Scratch or Shovel. To permanently obtain Shovel, steal the necromancy of Thay from the basement of the house in the Blighted Village. Then respec to a warlock, summon a Quasit, and choose only first dialogue options. Giths. quests. From the local vendor, for the future, buy Knife of the Adamantine King. We will only be able to use it in the third act, where I will explain its powers. Until then, you may keep it at camp, or use it on other characters. Of course, take the dexterity gloves. Firstly, it's a +1 to attack rolls. Secondly, we finally free up a lot of characteristic points that we can now pour into charisma to enhance paladin buffs. On the level 8, we respec to the final version of the build. First levels in Oath of Vengeance Paladin, 6 levels in Sword College Bard, take Savage Attacker Fit, 9th and 10th levels in Fighter, and the last 2 levels in Bard. Oh guys, I haven't mentioned the tadpole perks yet. Which ones to take and which ones not to take? I think it's obvious for Divine Smite, there's nothing better than guaranteed crit. Next in importance, Conduit, Charm, Psionic Backlash. Among active abilities, Volatile Shield, aka Shield of Thralls, looks pretty good for buffing yourself before the fight. The worst is Psionic Overload, because for some reason Overload doesn't stack with the Strange Conduit ring. Maybe this will be fixed someday, but for now, this is why I don't see a reason to spend Zaith'isk buff on a Paladin, except when playing solo, because you just don't need to use any Illithid abilities during the fight, except for the passives. The last thing that interests us in Creche is the Arcane Acuity Diadem. You might think that killing this Githyanki will aggro the whole location, but just so you know, one day I got a Silent Assassin rank in Death on the Mississippi mission. Well, actually I was sitting nearby when it was done, but anyway, open the path to Maze of Lathander, take Valar Aloof. When its aura is active, people don't like to be near you. By repeating my standard day in life, I made a woman run from me to the basement, where I once shot at her with a fully charged with a crit and third spell slot, Divine Smite. If you strike with a normal attack and don't one-shot her, the game will have time to react, and the Githyankis will aggro on you. So use Divine Smite skill specifically. And that's it. The diadem is obtained without any problems. Also, for the diadem to work, take Ability Drain passive. At Creche you should have exactly 10 tadpoles, so you can afford all these skills. If you have fewer tadpoles or have used some on other characters, don't worry. The main thing on a paladin is to have at least these 4 skills by the time you get the diadem. Before you go, you can also kill the Ketheric Terrazin. Her sword is obviously worse than the astral one in everything except the additional initiative, but if in your party you have the second paladin or other melee unit, it can be useful. Cursed Lands. Here the most important thing is to buy the gloves of the Automaton from Barcus route. They give the same effect as the Risky Ring, but the effect is not passive. It can be applied, then you quickly switch to the other gloves, and for the next 10 turns of combat, you'll have an advantage on attacks, without disadvantages on checks from Risky Ring. Basically, it's just a wow of enmity which you don't need to spend a level on. Also, you can buy Armored Boots from the Mole's Friend and Armored Cloak from Quatermaster. As soon as you visit Moonrise Towers, sell your pet vampire into sucking slavery for 2 points of strength. In the tower's prison, I recommend to get the second spell slot restoring amulet, which, by the way, is stronger than the one we bought from Amelum. Further, in Dark Lands, visit a cave and loot a flesh melter cloak there. It's the only worthwhile item for its slot for a melee character, in Act 2 especially. Here we have enemies that often revive with 1 HP. Provoking them to attack can easily finish them off without spending actions. Also, we can loot the Shadow Cloak ring, which can be obtained by breaking the torches and fighting the dogs. Also, we have Kalos Glow ring from the room near Balthazar. Killer's Sweetheart from the Clone's Trial. This is probably the main power spike of the build in Act 2. This thing gives you another guaranteed crit, especially useful when playing solo, when you don't have a team that can apply Hold Person. Surgical Amulet, that's the most standard boost for any damage dealer, especially the one that depends on crits. Also, if you created your character with Gale origin, you'll get an additional spell circle from the Doctor. I could mention the Mighty Cloths, which are pretty good if you don't mind having no survivability, but there's a Giant's Elixir, so I don't think Mighty Cloths are worth it. Well, I don't think you'd be surprised if I say that Radiant Damage from Divine Smites works pretty well against Creatures of Darkness, so all the remaining Thorns and Tadpole carriers were easily wiped from the map. Yes, enough. We have another improvement for our build. In Ketheric Lair, take this stone. It doubles all our psychic damage, which is a serious matter and shouldn't be underestimated, considering the number of sources of this damage we have. Since I completed Ketheric solo, I want to say that this boss is not the easiest for a melee character and requires some preparations. First of all, restore your resources, and along with this, charge the Killer's Sweetheart. We need to have 2 guaranteed crits in this fight. Oh, and I hope you didn't use Luck of the Far Realms after your last long rest. Use invisibility and run to this platform, where Ketheric won't see us. Use either Strength or Bloodlust Potion. Summon Creche. He's only summon that can rescue characters. You can buff him with Potion of Vigilance, so that he will be in the same turn with you. That allows you to pull off a trick to recover actions after death during your turn. Survival Instinct gives you this opportunity even if you're not an orc. Okay, after summoning Creche, start buffing yourself. Friendship, Circuity Interface, Volatile Shield, swap to the Gloves of Heroism, Inquisitor's Might, swap to Dexterity Gloves, and throw a Potion of Invisibility on yourself and Creche. With your main character, attack the Illithid from stealth, and when the dialogue ends, make Creche free Aelin. Move the dog away from the fight, and for safety, it's better to use another Potion of Invisibility on him. I kill the Illithid, trying not to waste too many actions and spell slots, especially since on low HP it dies easily from a simple psionic backlash. Don't hesitate to use Bard's Flourishes and Haste Potions. Our task is to destroy all enemies on this side as quickly as possible, so that Aelin can get up on a platform and start tanking Ketheric. Try to stun him. The most important thing now is not to die and push him into the second phase. At this point I cast Survival Instinct on myself, waiting for my next turn, and then use Action Surge and Haste Potions to get as many actions as possible. After that I spent all these actions except for one. With the last action I place a Rune Powder Bomb or other explosive. Try to do this at this part of arena to avoid hitting Creche with the explosion. So I used the last action to blow it up with a Fire Arrow or any other incendiary, and with a full set of actions and a weakened Ketheric, I destroy him before he can heal. This is a 100% guaranteed way to beat Ketheric on almost every melee character. Other options rely on RNG with dice. If you didn't dodge enough or didn't stun him when needed, your solo honor mode run will simply end. In the third act, take Nyrulna. Mr. Akabi will teleport you to the location with it if you steal his ring and roll a jackpot. Personally, I always starting to spell relations with him only after winning the poison jar. But there's a chance to win this Carafel last among all the junk he has. This blocks the passage to Nyrulna forever, as Akabi will refuse to play with you after you got all the prizes. In Gortash's castle, take the boots that prevent our character from being moved or knocked down. In Khazad-dûr's castle, be sure to take the Helmet of Crit. In the city, buy or steal Legacy of the Masters, Mantle of the Holy Warrior. The skill from the mantle can be applied just like the Automaton gloves buff. Just switch to another slot after using it. And don't forget, Crusader's Mantle Aura triggers Strange Conduit Ring. For the bow slot, there are two options. The Deathshot, which increases the critical hit chance, or the Hellrider Longbow, which gives a +3 to initiative. The latter is quite good against someone like Gortash, who is difficult to make the first turn against. Now I'm heading to Raphael's mansion to get his 2 legendaries. Disarm the signaling before taking them, otherwise you'll have to fight the demon. If you cannot disarm it, just put anything heavier than a kilogram on a pedestal before stealing. Heading to the House of Grief for the stat buff. While you sacrifice your attribute points, there is a chance to get Patriarch's Memory. It additionally boosts Charisma by 1 point. Out of the selectable attributes, we have a little choice. If we take Charisma, we will get +1 damage from Inquisitor's Might and Diadem of Arcane Equity, and also +1 to saving throws. On the other hand, we have Dexterity. It provides a bonus to Initiative. If you use Light Armor, it adds some AC, and if you choose to use a Dagger version of the build, it also increases damage and hit chance. I think if you play in a party and use Nyrulna, it's better to have higher Charisma. If you're playing solo, buff Dexterity. You may ask, what the Dagger version of the build I mentioned? Well, let's head to Sarawak. Find the assassin, kill the assassin, make sure to take his hands to present as evidence. Bhaalist Armour. It can be worn by the Paladin or any other character, if this character can approach enemies before the Paladins strike them. Now you can put aside the Astral Plane Sword and never return to it. Our Paladin now has a little choice which version of the build to use, depending on the game conditions and personal preferences. First is the standard strength build with Nyrulna, focusing on maximum damage per strike. At the last level, we take the Great Weapon Master fit. The hit and crit chance is the lowest in this version, but it's well compensated by Surgeon's Subjugation Amulet and the Hold Monster/Person spells from your mage or mages. You don't worry about the hit chance where it's guaranteed anyway. Because of our 2 guaranteed crits, we can get 2 additional attacks from Great Weapon Master in every first turn of the day, this way utilizing the second bonus action from Helmet of Grit. This allows us to knock out such beautiful numbers from bosses. By the way, if you don't want to use Grit Helmet, you can keep the Diadem. With Nyrulna, the damage scales only from strength, so either use the Cloud Giant Potion with Legacy of the Masters or the Gauntlets of Hill Giant. If you run out of movement and can't reach the enemy, you can easily throw your spear. Even without special throwing feat, with our strength, it will deal decent damage. Second version of the build, designed for more autonomous gameplay, ideal for solo runs. Here we have slight adjustments to fighting styles at levels 2 and 10 for min-maxing, but the main point is, instead of Great Weapon Master, we take the bonus agility fit. Take the Undermountain Knife in the offhand and Orin's Dagger in the main hand. This way you get a higher crit chance and won't depend on hold person. Additionally, Orin's Dagger allows you to apply piercing damage weakness without using Bhaalist Armour, so you can use any other chest piece. That adds some survivability. Of course, this way with the first strike you will not deal double damage, since the debuff on the opponents hasn't been applied yet. However, I don't think this is critical, considering the number of attacks we have per turn. For the helmet, you can use either Helmet of Grit or the Helmet of Sarawak. In this version, the gauntlets and giant potions are not needed, so just use Legacy of the Masters. And if you want to use some elixir, consider Viciousness, Vigilance, or Bloodlust options. Cause Dagger Paladin has a huge crit chance. Even a bow, which we seemingly don't specialize in, deals quite a lot of damage, especially with Bard Slashing Flourish. The Dagger version works better against undead enemies who can be paralyzed, as well as against the Nether Brain, which is also immune to paralyzes. But if you saved your guaranteed crits with Nyrulna, yeah, with it you will deal more damage even to them. By the way, you can use both versions of the build in the same playthrough. Gear of characters will look like this. As you can see, with both setups, you can kill Raphael solely in one turn. And what Nyrulna version do with him with help of a sorcerer? In a solo playthrough, the only thing I found is that in long storyline events where you can take long rests, such as the ending, it's helpful to have at least 1 potion of Angelic Slumber to chill a bit before the brain. Of course, if you want to deal with it as quickly as possible, like I did on my solo playthrough, in 1 turn. Yes, I would be glad if you check my other videos and leave a like.